Hey everybody, it's Polish Pete and we are in the fall transition. It is that time. The nights are getting cool right now. We haven't really seen the lake really transition fully into fall. So we're just in that transition period where some of the fish are breaking off from those late summer patterns and going into the fall transition. And that time of year is one of the most challenging times of year to catch fish, to pattern them. You can get really lucky and have some killer days during the transition where you find them in a transition point, like where they're still schooled up, and you find them maybe transferring from some deep rocks into some thick vegetation before they go and get up into some sparser vegetation and spread apart. In our neck of the woods up here, you tend to see them start busting up, and they're not in such big schools during the transition period where they're kind of just positioning themselves for those fall cooler months. So the bite can get pretty inconsistent. So there's a few baits that I personally have confidence in the fall to not just catch numbers, but to try and get bigger, more quality bites. And I would say the number one thing I love about fall fishing is jig fishing. It's a pretty unique time of year to fish a jig. In the sense that I go to trailers like this Berkeley Power Bait Jigger Craw here that do not have an excessive amount of action in the claws. They don't kick a ton like let's say like a Strike King Rage plastic or something along those lines that have like almost a boot tail action to the kick, like a flanged end of the claw or appendage, so that it kicks in the water really heavily. So I like the net bait pocket chunks and I like this Jigger Craw here, baits like that don't get such an aggressive action. I also bumped down the size of my jig quite a bit than I would in the summer. I go where I would normally fish a 3/4 ounce jig or 5/8, I go down to a 1/2 ounce. I like to keep my skirt a lot fuller and thicker too, to keep the fall rate of the jig a lot slower, and I don't want as much action on the jig as it's falling through the water column. I tend to find that when I'm flipping along and covering all the remaining vegetation that's still really good in this late summer, early fall months, whatever remaining vegetation is really strong and looks really healthy will still hold some fish, but you tend not to get as many bites in that vegetation. So I love fishing a jig because it can produce a bigger bite, but you just have to cover a lot of water and fish it a little slower, if that makes any sense. It's hard to slow down and cover water at the same time, but it tends to be the way to produce bigger bites in the fall. Next up would be Old Faithful and the frog. I chose this toad runner right here for a reason, because just like the frog, the buzz bait's really powerful this time of year, but I wanted to keep it to 3 baits that I like to fish, so this is a good combination of the two. Matted vegetation, as the vegetation slowly starts dying off these late summer months and early fall months, you get matted vegetation that blows in around our boat ramps, around docks, up against the shore, in the back of coves and pockets. You'll see what I'm talking about as the vegetation kind of breaks loose, it's burnt off or it's dying off for the season as those cool nights. You'll see that vegetation kind of stacking up. And I don't know if it holds heat or what the scientific reason behind it is, but a lot of times fish start positioning in those fall time mats. So targeting the remaining lily pads, reeds, things like that with a frog can be a riot. It can produce big, huge bites. And a buzzbait to cover water is a great one, or a frog when you find that matted vegetation or thick surface vegetation like lily pads and things like that. It's a killer way. This frog right here, this toad runner from Booyah, combines both baits. So it's got a little boot tail on the back, and as you reel it in, the Teckle frog or this frog right here, the two on the marker that do it, as you reel it steady back in, the boot tail spins around and creates like a buzz bait effect behind the bait, but it still features those weedless frog hooks on that soft body frog, so I can throw it up on a mat, kind of work it slowly over that mat, get it to the edge, and reel it back to the boat. So this is becoming a cool little bait to add to your arsenal for that transitioning fish in those fall months before it's really thick into the fall and those fish are really settled in and you're targeting specific areas and you're still covering water and trying to find them during the transition. Cool bait to target at them with. And this one here, this is probably tried and true around the United States of America, one of the best fall transition baits. late fall or into the fall, even into the winter baits there is on planet Earth, and that is the lipless crankbait. This particular one, the red eye shad. This one here's the tungsten 2-tap. I started throwing it last year a little bit because it does have a little bit of a different sound to it. I like to try and throw a little bit of something different. I've noticed a lot of tournament anglers down in Florida and stuff where a lipless crankbait's a key player in those early months of the summer, or the pre-spawn months where they're throwing a trap in that grass like they are in even the TVA lakes. That a lot of anglers are looking for that different sounds and noises that a different trap can make just to show them something different. And that's, sorry by saying trap, I'm referring to a lipless crankbait. A lot of people refer to it as a trap, lipless crankbait. Some guys just call it a red eye shad because this one's really popular from Strike King, or a rattle and wrap from the Rapala versions. But I tend to call them traps or just liplesses. And but this one here, the tungsten 2-tap, has a little bit different sound. Now Strike King has several different variants in the red eye family. I love all the colors that they have in them. They're easy to fish. They're easy to clean grass off of. They come with pretty good stock hooks on them. So if you want to tie this thing on, go out, start throwing it on weed lines that are still remaining, over weed flats that are still remaining, clearing the grass off them. It allows you to just cover water. Keep casting and cover water, because during these transition months, those fish typically aren't just schooled off on all the traditional offshore structure. Now, that doesn't mean you don't go check it and see if you still have a school that hasn't transitioned yet. But if they've moved from there, they could be broke off and all looking for their kind of cooler water locations for as the fall sets in. So look for remaining vegetation, throw this thing around, cover water. You get bit, you can slow down and throw a frog if you see a mat by it. You can flip a jig in that thick stuff right behind it, and you can have yourself one heck of a day, even during the tough time of trying to figure out the fall transition.